Gen Z, they're digital colonizers. They have like been there, done that, seen all the strings, and they're kind of going into new spaces and creating new things. So I just wanted to give you guys a sense of place, because sometimes even ages, you're like, well, what did they see? What's happened since then? They're also tagged as the most diverse generation of their time, the most tech savvy, the most socially minded, and with that comes stereotypes as well. So some of the stereotypes are they're addicted to technology, right? That they're literally glued to their phones. They're activists, sometimes to a fault, and that they're antisocial. Now, whether or not those things are true, you kind of have to leave it up to yourself and your interaction with them. But there were some stereotypes that we wanted to unpack, and we're going to be focusing on a bunch of them today. So I guess we'll just get started, right, Colby?
Great, thanks, Loretta. So obviously, Loretta gave a lot of reasons why this generation is important to us. Beyond that, we've had several conversations with clients that have said, hey, we got to figure out how to crack this generation. So a few months ago, we really dug into this, and we started actually by having some conversations with folks in Gen Z. We got to understand their mindset. We also looked at a bunch of secondary research. So in this phase, we developed a number of different hypotheses and some areas that we wanted to explore. Ultimately, what we landed on was we conducted a study of 2,500 people, and we actually, for this first study, talked to people in different generations. So we wanted to see where Gen Z was different than the older generations. From that, we actually learned some new stuff that we weren't expecting to learn, and so we went back and fielded a couple follow-up rounds. All in, we talked to over 3,500 people to inform a lot of what we're going to talk about today. This is just going to guide our discussion. So obviously, if you can imagine talking to 3,500 people over 3 surveys, we have a number of different data points, but I just want to guide our discussion into these 6 primary topic areas. We're going to hit on some of the data. Loretta will probe some questions, and we'll carry through that. So the first is, Loretta talked a little bit about stereotypes that this generation has. So the first one was that they have this shifting context, right? So they shift from topic to topic. They shift emotionally. They are a restless generation. So whenever we have these hypotheses, we want to check it ultimately if they're true. Well, guess what? This one's true. So we found that 74% say I'm shifting at least some of the time about what I'm thinking about and focusing on just to keep up with my peers. As a matter of fact, we did learn that just over half, 53%, say, hey, I've got more than one profile on a social media platform. So Instagram, they've got 2, 3, maybe 4. So they have very different personas that they have to keep up depending on who the audience is that they allow into that different world. So what happens with all this shifting is that they say their life is inconsistent and unpredictable. So again, we've got this shifting from day to day, moment to moment, and all of a sudden now my life is really unpredictable. I don't know what to expect the next day. We did learn that there was over a majority that basically said I go to sleep the night before not having any idea what's going to be on my mind the next day. And it's not just these fleeting moments topic to topic. They've got a lot of meatier areas that they have to also be aware of. So this pink bar is the level of concern that Gen Z has across these areas. Now, just think of yourself when you were between the ages of 15 and 22. Was your level of concern about gender and racial inequality, the environment, gun violence, sexual harassment? It's as high, if not higher in some cases, than all other generations. So they've got a lot of concerns on their mind, and they are trying to keep up with the world, and they're trying to solve the world's problems because in their social media feed, you can imagine they see every single day something new that they have to be concerned about.
All while doing their homework.
All while doing their homework.
Okay, so Michael, let's kick off with that persona question, right? Because you were really fascinated that we were covering that. You kind of live and breathe this in your own personal life, I'm sure, but what's up with the whole multiple personas on different platforms? Why do you think that's happening?
All right, so as we've talked about, Gen Z is stressed out, right? We're shifting a lot. There's a lot to think about, all these different issues, plus your normal issues, like your normal young person issues, your homework, like you said, getting into a college, your love life, plus all of these issues. Constantly thinking about what is the next thing we're going to be thinking about the next day. So the reason why we're shifting on social media is specifically because we're sick of shifting in real life. Okay, so let me explain that. On social media, mainly on Instagram, there's Rinstas and there's Finstas. Your Rinsta is your real Instagram. This is the one that sometimes public, sometimes private. Usually anyone can follow it. This is where it's highly curated, a lot of filters, you're looking your best, you're taking like 2 hours to come up with a caption, right? all that stuff. And then you've got your Finsta. That's your fake Instagram where it's not curated. The caption a lot of times is just like a rant or something real about your life. Selfies where you actually look like yourself, right? So the irony here, of course, is that your real Instagram, your Rinsta, is fake, and your Finsta is real. And then sometimes you've got like the Russian doll thing where it's like a Finsta, and then they have another Finsta for their closer friends, and it's like the circles, and then you have like the closest friends is like a third Finsta, like literally the Russian dolls. And it's like really nice when you find you're following all of their Finstas because like, you've made it to that inner circle. Now, I mean, the reason for that is that we feel the FOMO of needing to know all this information all the time, like we talked about, and needing to always look good on Instagram, constantly needing to be on the ball, having an educated opinion on everything. Finsta is where we can just be ourselves, be authentic, and just like, be a normal person and just calm down. So ironically, we're using our Finstas that are locked for our closest friends just to like be ourselves. So we're shifting, to finally have a place where we can be authentic with our friends and be vulnerable. So that's kind of one of the consequences of all the stuff we have to know is that we only have one place we can truly be ourselves on Finsta.
And do you see that across platform, like multiple Twitter handles, multiple, just like Instagram and TikTok? Are there multiple handles? Like, what do you think is profiles? What do you think is happening there?
TikTok is doing so well, mainly because it's almost entirely kid-based. So people already feel that they can be vulnerable, they can be authentic on that platform. So you see a lot of more goofy videos. It's less highly curated. It's just like funny lip syncing, dance videos, that kind of stuff. And I'll talk later about how brands can interact in that environment. Okay. But on TikTok, you don't really need the multiple profiles because it's pretty much a place where everyone can be themselves already. And that's why TikTok has been doing so well.
So it would be almost anti-TikTok
yeah,
to
absolutely.
try to curate
something on TikTok would be, yeah, exactly, anti-TikTok, what's made it so successful.
All right, cool. So Jen, so this shifting context, like there's outcomes of the shifting context besides just multiple profiles. Like what are you seeing as far as some results of that context?
Sure. In the marketing world for Aussie, we are a bit of a complement in thinking of what Michael said in terms of him or her creating what they want. We're looking at what we're trying to show and how to make that relevant. And there's been a big misconception, I think, with Gen Z that because they've grown up in a multi-screen world, there's information coming at them all the time, that they're overwhelmed to the point that they have attention deficit. They actually have one of the most discerning filters and eyes for content, for who's talking to them in what context of any generation. So, for example, the platforms they're on, they will discern for who looks like they belong, right? Facebook is where I put up my photos that I don't mind my grandmother seeing. And I really don't show my real self there. I don't really want to see brands in certain contexts there, so you're out. And they will process those things at a little less than half the rate of millennials is what we've been finding increasingly with the content. So we have been challenged in that eye of discernment that when we show our brand to him or her that we are useful or entertaining or connecting emotionally, but we have to serve a purpose or a function that makes sense in the environment where we show up. And if we do that, we don't get them at all.
Got it. So don't waste their time, no matter which profile
Yes.
they're engaging with.